Who have been murdered. Okay, so we're going to just jump right on into it. Now, our first case is a Dorothy Brown. She's 14 years old, and this was a case. Let me make sure where this happened. I don't want to give you some false information. I apologize. Okay, this happened out of Dallas, Fort Worth. She actually passed away. This happened June 4th. She was shot previous to that. She was shot on May 27th by an 18-year-old male. Her friends had set her up to meet this guy, and there was an argument. She got into an argument with this male suspect, and he pulled out a handgun, shot her, and fled from the scene. On the page, I actually had posted video from her mother, discussing the incident and, warning young girls that everyone is not your friend, and running away from home is not the answer just because you have a disagreement. Unfortunately, Miss Dorothy Brown did not live to learn that lesson. Again, she was 14 years old in Dallas, Fort Worth, and she was murdered by an 18-year-old male. She got into it with him, and now initially she was on life support, but she eventually died, and her case was upgraded to murder. So now the suspect, he's being charged with murder. Now, our next case is Miss Kody John. She's 24 years old. She was 24 years old, and Miss John was killed in Houston, Texas, back on May 20th. And it actually was an insane domestic violence, murder-suicide situation. Her ex-boyfriend killed her. She was 7 months pregnant, according to Houston Police Department. This same suspect, he also shot her mother, her sister, and her new boyfriend. So he went on just a killing spree. Now, the mother, sister, and new boyfriend actually survived the incident, but Miss John, she lost her life, as well as she was 7 months pregnant. The baby died. Now, the suspect, Kendrick Thomas, they found him hiding in the cab of his uncle's 18-wheeler, and it was a 10-minute standoff, and he ended up shooting and killing himself in the cab of his uncle's semi. And again, that happened out of Houston, Texas. Now, the next case is Miss Elijah Davis. She's 16, and they're still gathering information on this case because the young lady, the story is kind of convoluted. Police responded to an area hospital out in Baltimore, Maryland on May 30th for a report of a walk-in shooting victim. when the officers got there, they found this 16-year-old Miss Elijah Davis suffering from a gunshot wound to the throat. And there was also a 30-year-old male who came in. He suffered a gunshot wound to the back. Now, the girl she ended up being pronounced dead, but homicide detectives are asking anyone with information to call them at 410-396-2100 or the Metro Crime Stoppers at 866-7-LOCK-UP. Just one moment. Yes.
Just one.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. So again, this was Elijah Davis, 16-year-old out of Baltimore, Maryland. And she was killed. They have no suspects. They don't know what the issue was surrounding it. The 30-year-old male, he survived the gunshot wound to his back. But I've tried to go back and see if any updates on the story. But unfortunately, there are no updates. Now, the next story is out of Lansing, Michigan. Treasure Adams was 17 years old. She was found dead on May 24th. I'm sorry, she was missing since May 24th, and she was found dead 6 days later. The cause of death is still pending, but 2 suspects have been arrested in her murder. One was, these were 2 Hispanic males, and she may or may not have had a relationship with one of the suspects. But right now, the cause of death for Miss Treasure Adams is pending, and they don't have any information, about her cause of death. But 2 male Hispanics have been arrested surrounding her murder. Our next victims, this was a double murder out of New City, New York on May 26th. Police actually were called to the home, for a welfare check, and police not only discovered the 2 women dead, they were mother and daughter, Kathleen Castor, 27, and Wanda Castor, who's 63. They discovered an infant girl. She was unhurt, and they found her in a pool of blood at the home. Someone did call, one of the neighbors called, and the police said they are interviewing a man who is a person of interest, but right now he's the only one in custody. There's no further information on that. I don't even have a suspect's name, his race, age, or anything. But the 27-year-old was the mother of the infant girl, and she was unhurt, but they found the bodies of her mother and grandmother in a double homicide in a cottage in New City, New York. Okay, and the next case is out of Chicago, Illinois on May 30th. Danielle Jones, who was 30 years old, she was killed in a shooting in Avalon Park on the south side. They said she was standing on her front porch about 2:50 in the morning, and a male suspect just walked up to her and fired shots. She was hit in the chest, and she was taken to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where she was pronounced dead. An autopsy was conducted, and of course they confirmed she died of her gunshot wounds. But again, no one's in custody for the murder of Danielle Jones out of Chicago, Illinois, and that happened on May 30th. Now, our next case is Miss Constance Russell, 30 years old, out of Sunflower, Mississippi. This happened May 24th, and they received the police of the Sunflower Police said they received a call around 8 in the morning and responded to an apartment complex where they found Miss Russell. She was a mother of two. They found her unresponsive with a gunshot wound to the head. And again, her 6-month-old was found unharmed next to her in a pool of blood. Now, they said the initial indication was that the bullet entered through the side of her neck and it actually exited through her nose. They said there was a bullet hole found in the front door, and a neighbor who noticed the broken glass was the one who called the officers. The assailant evidently exited through a back bedroom window. Again, this is according to Police Chief Bobby Walker. And again, no one is arrested. They said they have a person of interest, but no one has been arrested for that murder as of yet for Miss Constance Russell. And it's just so sad. These mothers are being killed, holding their infants, next to their infants. I mean, nobody just has no sanctity anymore for motherhood or womanhood, just anything. Our next case is Jamelia Stroy, 23 years old, out of Dallas, Texas. Now, she was stabbed to death near a Cedar Crest neighborhood. She was taken to a local hospital where she was pronounced dead. They do not know who did it, if she was involved in any altercation or anything. They just found her lying on the ground, stabbed to death. Our next case is Miss Destiny Smith. Miss Destiny Smith was murdered on May 30th in Kansas City, Missouri. Police were called around 3:30 in the morning for a report of shots fired. They actually arrived. They found a young woman dead, and she was actually with her older sister and another man. Both of them were critically injured. They are both still alive, but the police spokesman said that the initial investigation indicated that there was a family gathering and it resulted in a disturbance that led to the shooting. No suspects have been arrested, and Ms. Destiny Smith was the mother of a toddler daughter. So again, we are talking about women being murdered and children being left orphaned. Our next case is Talisha Faye Johnson. She was a 41-year-old woman out of Kansas City, Kansas. Now, two people, she was killed along with someone else, and the suspect is in custody following the double shooting. And police responded to a shooting, and when they arrived, they found Miss Johnson and a man both dead from apparent gunshot wounds. She's a mother of three. There were two juveniles actually also in the car. Two of her children were also in the car, but they were not injured physically, but psychologically, they will be, that'll be a lot that they have to deal with. Our next case is out of Baldwin, Louisiana. This is Miss Carlita Marks. She was 25. Now, this happened early in the morning of May 30th. Again, deputies responded to a call of a shooting at about 12:30 in the morning. And when they got to the scene, they found that Miss Carlita had been shot. She was taken to a local hospital, but of course she later died, and detectives are investigating the incident as a homicide. Again, no suspects, no one knows anything. Um, and our, let me back up right here. Okay. Our next case is Miss Italia Marie Kelly, 22-year-old woman out of Davenport, Iowa on May 31st. Now, relatives say she was shot and killed while leaving a protest against police brutality, surrounding this George Floyd incident. She was at a protest outside of a Walmart, actually, in Davenport. And she was one of two people fatally shot that night as civil unrest, they say, civil unrest rolled through the city. And the victim's aunt says she joined a protest late Sunday over the killing of George Floyd. Police say they are investigating the circumstances surrounding her death, but no arrests have been made. Now, this is not the only young woman or Black woman who has been injured, accosted, raped, and what have you at these incidents. I have implored Black women to stay away from these protests. These protests have just all kinds of criminal elements running amok. Women are being raped at these rallies, at these so-called protests, at these lootings and what have you. The news is not reporting them, but I can safely tell you that I have several police reports of not only murders of Black women that have been occurring, but as I said, beatings and rapes are occurring at these rallies. We need to stop this and stop all of this fighting for people who are not reciprocating this in return. This is not our battle. We need to stop it and start directing our energy towards Black women and girls. We are the face of this violence that is going on in the community. We're not even uplifting and upholding our own interests. We are continuously falling prey to this indoctrination that all these abuses in the community against Black men somehow take precedence over what has happened to us. Okay, I'm gonna get off of my little soapbox about that. Now, our next case is Miss Marsha Brown out of St. Louis, Missouri, 25 years old. She was killed in a double shooting that left her dead. Now, there is a man that has been charged with that double shooting. So there has been an arrest in her case. But that weekend when she was killed, it was actually 4 people killed. She was one of 4 people who were killed and 20 were wounded in just a complete weekend of violence down in St. Louis. Again, we're putting ourselves in the fray for people who don't, do the same for us. Again, another case of a woman being killed during the civil unrest. And again, the news is not reporting these incidents. Now, our next case is Deja Neil, 32-year-old woman out of Louisville, Kentucky. And she was a mother of a young infant son. And she was murdered. Now, they do not know who her killer was. And again, an infant is left dead. There was another woman who was shot earlier in the evening, but police are saying that woman, she's in critical condition. And they're saying that these 2 cases are not related. Now that's what they're saying. They don't believe either shooting is connected, and they don't believe it has anything to do with, they're saying they don't believe it's even related to the protest. Although, a lot of information is being suppressed as it relates to issues that are going on with us. Let me see. Our next case is LaQuasha Martin. She's 32 years old, and Miss LaQuasha was murdered in Macomb, Mississippi, and actually a 16-year-old has been charged with Miss Martin's murder. It's a 16-year-old male. She's Miss LaQuasha Martin is 40 years old. They were called to the scene of a shooting on May 30th, and they were actually flagged down by a witness. Now the witnesses directed them to where Mr. Martin was lying. I believe that is a relative. They didn't say. He was lying on the living room floor with multiple gunshots. And later they were directed to another area, and that's where they found her dead on the porch. But hours later, 16-year-old Tucker Morris, he was arrested and charged with murder. 16-year-old, his life is down the drain. This woman, she's dead now as a result of who knows what. It sounds like it may have been a random shooting, but I'm not sure of the specifics. But in the meantime, this woman is dead. Our next case is Miss Keisha May Bolden. She was murdered on May 31st in Chicago, and she was they found her fatally shot. No suspects have been arrested, and she was 18 years old. Keisha May, she was a college student, and she was murdered on May 31st. And also that night, there was another young lady. I don't have her picture right now, but there were actually two young ladies killed in Chicago that night. And the other young lady was 18 years old, and she was a high school student. So, again, Chicago, that night, they had that weekend of May 31st, I want to say Chicago had about I want to say that they had 18 shootings, and of those, two of them were the young women, and those were the fatalities. Now, our next case is Kamea Ruffin. She's 27 years old. She was murdered on June 1st out of Columbus, Ohio. There seemed to be a shooting on the east side that day, and about 7:30 in the evening, police are investigating the shooting. No suspect information is available. She was transported to Ohio State East Hospital, where she later was pronounced dead. And again, that's 27-year-old Kamea Ruffin. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the first name correctly, but she's a 27-year-old killed in Columbus, Ohio. Our next case is Timeia Jones. Miss Timeia was 22 years. Miss Timeia was 22 years old, and she was killed out of Dallas, Texas. She was a mother of one young child, and she was killed at a bar. She was out for the evening, and two gunmen actually opened fire inside this Dallas area bar. No suspects have been arrested. And again, she lost her life. She was a mother of one young child. I believe it was a son. And again, out of that happened out of Dallas, Texas. Let me get to our next case. Okay, here we go. Our next case is Teresa Saunders, 38 years old. Now, two suspects actually have been arrested in the case of Teresa Saunders, a Black man and a Hispanic woman out of Lima, Ohio. They haven't been arrested. They're being sought. Along with Miss Saunders, a relative was killed with her, a man, a 43-year-old man. It was a double murder that happened. Miss Saunders lost her life. No one knows the circumstances surrounding it, but the Lima police are centering their search on two suspects following the shooting deaths of her and her relative. Clinton Owens Jr. is identified as the suspect, 32-year-old Black man, and Michelle Alves, 31, is also a person of interest in the shooting deaths. Of course, I'm not sure how they came to the conclusion that they were involved in it, but those are definitely the two suspects that they are saying involved in the killing of Miss Saunders. Miss Ashley Johnson is our next victim. She was killed out of St. Paul, Minnesota on June 3rd, and she was shot and killed. She's 29 years old, Ashley Johnson, and she is the mother of 4 children, 3 girls and 1 boy. And she was found dead in a car in St. Paul, Minnesota. They were called, officers, again, same scenario, common. Officers were called because of a report of gunshots near an intersection. And once they arrived, they found Miss Johnson's body in the car. First responders tried to help, but she was pronounced dead at the scene. Okay. Our next and last final case for today is Talia Junior. She's a 14-year-old that lost her life out of Akron, Ohio on June 4th. They said that it was a double homicide. It was actually a double homicide. A 24-year-old male was with her that was also dead. They said she was fatally shot. Trying to see how they came to the scene because, again, police were called because of a report of shots fired around 10:50 in the evening. And when they arrived, they found Miss Talia, 14. She had a gunshot wound to the chest. And Mr. Durrell, he was 24. He had a gunshot wound to the head. Now, they do have a suspect in custody, a 20-year-old Eric Sarzosa, 20-year-old Hispanic male. He's being charged with 2 counts of murder, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of justice. He was booked, and there is no bond for him, but the investigation is ongoing for Miss Talia, as well as the 24-year-old man who was murdered along with her. So, there's no information regarding the circumstances surrounding that. But that's where we're at. There actually will be You know, every week, you know, we highlight these murders, but next week, you know, there'll be additional because there are actually, I have actually 16 plus victims that, you know, I just couldn't get around to, you know, because of time. But as I told Rolanda, we're actually around the 386, 388 mark in deaths, murders. I don't want to say deaths because to me as a nurse, when I think death, I think of something natural or because of terminal illness. These are outright murders. We're up to about 386 plus because I have 16 additional stories, but there are also some other incidents that I haven't even accrued into those 16. So we're by next week, I'm sure we're going to be surpass the 400 mark. And that's where we are this week. Oh, and I'm currently working on my website, getting all my information from that I've accrued for the last since 2019. I'm getting all that information. The website site should be up and running within the next week. That way, I will not have to rely on social media. That actually, I believe they have they're flagging people who are using hashtag Black anything because my page has been blocked for 1 week. Yesterday on the 10th, I was able to make one post, but immediately following that post, I was blocked again. And I believe in my heart of hearts that the hashtag Black femicide is a flag for them, and they are wanting to suppress the truth about what's going on. So I probably more than likely can post the story with no hashtags, but that would mean that the stories would be suppressed. So when you search the stories related with the hashtag Black femicide, uh, all of the following stories will be suppressed and they will not be pulled up. So this is a active suppression against Black women and girls to not tell the truth about what's really going on in our communities in light of what's going on with George Floyd. Again, the focus is on police brutality and Black men and boys, whereas the community violence that is continuously perpetuated against Black women and girls is being ignored and basically made to be non-existent. But myself, Rolanda, and other Black women who are in this fight, we will not be stopped. We will be an immovable force and we will continue to get this information out there.